Hello and welcome back to the Morningscape podcast. I'm going to drop the freaking thing. We're live, so I can't restart after that. So, Matt, how are you doing on this beautiful, lovely, early recording on Monday night?
Rushed, bad, stressed, hungry, all those things.
I feel all those things as well. How funny and hilarious. Yeah, I have hockey tonight myself. I'll be hitting the ice at 9:15, and this is probably going to happen once in a while. So it is what it is. Recording after is just we've done it before. It's pretty brutal. Not a good alternative. And at some point, maybe Matt will even have a guest on when I have a game to avoid having too many of these. But as of now, a 3-game slate. Whatever. Let's just get into things. Well, 3 game slate Monday night, so not as much going on is what I'm getting at.
Yes.
How are you feeling? How was your weekend? What's going on?
Um, Weekend was okay, I suppose. I picked up an 888 ticket on Friday. I mean, it was a long weekend. We recorded on Wednesday's show. Obviously, no hockey Thursday. I don't remember how Wednesday went, whether it was good or bad. I'm sure we'll get to it when we do guarantee goals. But Friday, there were multiple slates. I picked up an 888 ticket for later this month, which is nice. Just ran one showdown team into that like 140 that never fills, and it's the only 140 satellite I entered. So it feels really good to hit that. Otherwise, though, I think I had a decent Sunday too, thanks to the NHL. No thanks to the NFL. And yeah, that's about it. So I'm feeling good, but certainly looking forward to this 10 gamer on Tuesday.
Yeah, there's an incredible amount of I can't complain about NFL Sunday that has to happen, or really the betting card in general with the Voronkov bailout. So I was a bit blessed in that respect. So I'm not gonna go over anything else. It was just a weird NFL slate. Sometimes, like I said, in any sport, you can play good, run bad. You can play bad, run good, whatever. I feel like I could not have played more right down the middle. I just ran a bit hot just to get over the finish line, and everything. Like I think I was on the right stuff overall, and just whatever happens sometimes. And I'll take the wins when you can get them. It's been one of the, like, again, I started the season. I felt like I was absolute magma hot. I'm back. We're back. Let's run it. And then it gets cold. And hopefully we're just turning back the heat again as winter is upon us. With all that being said, it is December now. It is time to, fill the stockings, fill the under
Yeah.
the tree. And we just got to get into it. We got, you survive in advance. You move on to the next one. This is going to be a big 10-game slate. The Devils already scored. Did either of us get our goal bet? We'll check that on the fly to see if we can actively tilt or actively celebrate. It was Jesper Bratt. We tilt. But 10 games, a lot of 6.5s, a couple 5.5s, but like more 6.5s and 5.5s, and like some really interesting spots. But I guess all to say, like, there's some chalk here, but I don't think there's a lot of like pivots off the chalk that I wonder if like our perception now could change a lot tomorrow. And like what we're saying now about ownership could be entirely wrong. Cause I feel like at the end of the day, like there is a lot of interesting stuff. So what are any overview thoughts as we get into the slate?
The biggest thought I have is that DraftKings actually posted a pretty nice slate for us.
Yep.
Just as far as the contests are concerned, I'm a little surprised by it, to be honest. I maybe Thanksgiving and NFL, like, that just draws in new people, then that money has to be spent somewhere, because there's NBA. There's a full ass NBA slate. And we get a 444 that has 25K to first, 100K total prize pool. Obviously that's a bit higher dollar. But even the $40 is 5K to first, full prize pool there, 20K. And the where's the $15? Or the $20 is
20
also
is 20.
20K to first.
Yeah.
So it's certainly a good slate. It's definitely a good high stakes slate, which is interesting. Maybe if I have a good Monday, I can sort of convince myself that it's worth the single bullet into 444 there. But yeah, no, it's a really nice slate from that perspective. And like you said, there's a lot of stuff to poke and prod at that I think makes this slate super interesting. Given the time of the show, unfortunately, I don't think I have a ton of like I don't have everything that we saw, but I think I have a solid amount of it, and certainly with a lot of spots still up in flux for Tuesday, I think we should just get into things. Um, Starting off with Colorado at Buffalo.
I will be there tomorrow night at the game. Thank you to people that are paying for my tickets. It's very nice of them to do so. It's one of those things where like someone else at the company got asked and they're like, I can't go anymore. Do you want to go? And I was like, yeah. So I will take that. This is, people are always going to play Colorado, right? It's a 6.5. Colorado's a -142 favorite. There's stuff that could help make this work from a Colorado's perspective.
But before we do Colorado, can I just complain about something real quick? We're getting
Always.
active lines. We're getting lines for Chicago, Toronto. Obviously, neither team on tomorrow's slate, but the first time all year, Taylor Hall, Connor Bedard, Tyler Bertuzzi. Like, why did we not have Bertuzzi with Bedard at all until now? It's maddening. It's so frustrating, and I cannot believe that. Yeah. The night that I lock in literally every single roster spot, like with Devils, which I mean, I have Brett, so like cool, and no Jack Hughes, which is very funny because he didn't get an assist on the goal. But like, I have to get rid of Dylan Gunther if I want to play Tyler Bertuzzi, and like that's just not fun. Anyway, back to our regularly scheduled programming.
I mean, the thing is like you're saying it now, but I was literally saying this last time we talked about Chicago. I'm like, it's the one thing that everyone said they should try, and they did it for like a little bit, and Bedard was good, and they're like, no, let's not do that anymore. I'll never understand. Bertuzzi he's not good, but like it's kind of one of those things where it's like there is something to I can play with really high talented players, and I don't know, and he can, and then they just took him away from the only one on the team, and it is what it is. But speaking of very, very gifted, talented players, Colorado is, they probably have the most of them, but also the depth is weak. Always makes for an interesting way of playing against them or for them and all that stuff. But they're so desperate. They went out and traded for what I would have to say I think statistically was the worst save or the goal saved above expected goalie in the league with like as many stars as Scott Wedgwood had. It's been a mess in net for them. And that's probably the only way you could look at the Sabres and say like, that's interesting. Colorado's good. Sabres are a little bit cheap. Colorado's really expensive. Expecting like you have up here, McKinnon with Rantanen. It's always really hard for me not to pair those two together. I know that's the popular is to, you got to leave off Rantanen, you got to leave off Makar. I think at this point in time, if you're playing this and you have to leave off one of the main three, you're leaving off McKinnon. His shot numbers are peaking back up again. I still think that like you have to save where you can. You're not getting all three of them in probably on this slate. So what are your thoughts?
My main thought is that I don't trust the lines that they rolled last game. They lost 4-1. So like, they've just been throwing the lines in a blender every time out with very little regard as to what happens to them. I managed to lock into the Kovalenko stuff on the second line. He's not done much, but ice time's been limited. If he sticks in the top 6 for 2,600, I think that's interesting. I mean, whether he's with Middlestat or McKinnon, like clearly there's a role there. Also somewhat interesting is Ross Colton will travel. I don't think he's projected back until like the second half of their 5-game road trip, but like at least keep an eye on it because we know how good Ross Colton was. All that to say, we don't know what the lines are. If they wind up something like Nichushkin, Middlestat, Rantanen, I might be interested. I don't think I'm paying 10K for McKinnon in this matchup. The Sabres themselves ignore. Sorry, it's a little bit messy because I had to include today's slate and this slate. But we see here sort of in the middle that the matchup looks fine. There's no standout matchups for Colorado. But when you consider how expensive it is and just like how kind of I think there's a lot more in the mid tier elsewhere on the slate. I'm not that interested in spending everything right away on Colorado. So keep an eye on lines here. Moving over to Buffalo, we actually did have new lines. It's generally the same tenor as before, but we get Peterka with Cousins. That combo will check in at 9,600. Both players on the top power play paired with Zach Benson, who's near minimum on the second power play. So that line's interesting. Jason Zucker moves up to fill the Paterka role alongside Tage and Tuck. Obviously, Zucker Thompson are power play correlated. Tuck is second unit. And then the third line, Ryan McLeod, Yuri Kulik, and Jack Quinn. For me, the interest only lies in Darlene, Paterka, Cousins. But of course, I understand the Tage Thompson allure. 7,700 is probably fine. I think he's rounding back into sort of the form we expect from him. But yeah, any thoughts on Sabres here?
I mean, I just don't think I'm going there. Like, it just feels unnecessary. I mean, Tuck not on the same power play. I get the Tage Zucker thing. Like, Zucker's been good enough to there's consideration, but it's a 10-game slate. It's not a favorite of mine. The Sabres, at the end of the day, like, it's really, really hard to actually stack a team that just cannot score. The only way you're doing it is to say Tage is going to just get back. And like, the shots are there, the goals aren't following. Like, you just play Tage and whoever around him. And it's just hard when it's not exactly as we, this perfectly correlated piece where, like, if Tage is a score you must have had to have it, it just kind of gets sloppy. So probably not. That'll be a bit too expensive. Not that he hasn't been warranting that price. Like, he has double bonus upside, hasn't hit lately, but like, yeah, you're all the way in, you're all the way out. I just can't imagine actually going all the way in. So I'm down to move over to Detroit and Boston if you're ready.
If you need super punts, 5,400 for the combined duo of Kulik and Jack Quinn is actually kind of interesting. Let's see, what is he listed as? He's listed as a wing, so it's a wing-wing combination, not quite as powerful as getting a center wing just to fit in whatever. But they've both been pretty solid, about 7.5 expected fantasy points per game. That's relative to Paterka Cousins, who are like in the neighborhood of 9, and you're paying basically half the cost. Yeah, second power play, but like, at the end of the day, you just need one goal from this duo, and you're probably getting there. And there's at least an outside chance that one of them even gets a shot bonus too. So can't say that the minutes will be huge, but we haven't really seen this configuration, I believe, as a 3-man unit. So I'm at least a little bit interested in seeing how it fares. And yeah, just there's a punt if you need it. Let's get over to the Boston and Detroit, though. Detroit heading into Boston. They also rearranged their lines in practice on Monday. So we see here Michael Rasmussen with Dylan Larkin and Lucas Raymond. Tyler Mott, comp for Brinket, stays. And then Berggren, Kasper Tarasenko, and then Veleno, Kopp, and Fisher. Some minor power play 2 tweaks, but obviously I think the only points of interest here would be power play 1, which includes Larkin, Raymond, and Michael Rasmussen, along with the Brinket and Mo Sider. That top line for Detroit checks in at 13.8K. Michael Rasmussen is minimum salary. So any interest here in Detroit?
Never is probably going to be my answer for most of the season. Again, what we're looking at, one of the 3 5.5 totals. They're pretty big underdogs in Boston, plus 170. Their total is incredibly low. It feels like an option that you're going to get away from any ownership for, as you said, a pretty cheap, fully correlated stack. But to me, it just kind of feels like a fool's errand. You're kind of just like trying to get unique. And again, on a slate where I think you could go a lot of directions and get unique, it's not going to be that difficult. And there's better spots to get unique. So, and spots that frankly aren't that expensive either. So I don't think it's going to make my main mix, but if you want to try to talk me into it, you feel free.
Okay. I don't think it. No, I certainly don't. I was a little bit intrigued by Eric Gustafsson, minimum salary, second power play. He's just a guy who has been there, done that regularly. And so to see him at that minimum, I think Jeff Petry's a question mark for this game. I think he blocked a shot, ended up missing practice today. So there could be extra minutes available. Obviously, that would sort of be dependent on whether I just go with that punt or not. Because if Petry plays and he's truly just a third pair guy locked into that role, you're looking at like 15 minutes, which sure, it could get there in a pinch, but certainly not something I'm looking to go out of my way for. Lucas Raymond has been pretty solid, 4,700. I would be okay with that as a one-off. But yeah, I don't think I'm that interested in stacking Detroit either, as I'm sure you would not be surprised to hear. On the Boston front,
I'm pretty surprised.
Wow, shocking.
You love Detroit.
I do actually a lot. On the Boston side, no changes to report. Marchand, Lindholm, Brazo, very cheap. Marchand's expected numbers have come back down to earth a little bit, but he's still up near 11. Expected fantasy points per game output of only 7.9. That's not what you're hoping for on the actuals, but the expected is right in line with David Pastrnak. Now, part of that is because David Pastrnak has just not been that good this year, because the team around him has not been that good, et cetera, et cetera. But clearly, there's still an element of regression that we're expecting for Brad Marchand. 5,500 at home against Detroit. DJ, any interest in the possible chalk train? This might be one of the spots where we say, oh, it'll be owned, but and then it's not. But I'm guessing this will be pretty popular. So any interest in Brad Marchand, 5,500?
I mean, yes, I think there's some level of it. You have to have some level of interest with the way he's playing in the price tag that we just every single slate, we're just like, it's just not going up. It's staying down. Has he really smashed? No, there's a couple 20s in the mix, and you wouldn't complain about a 20 at 5.5. I wonder though, like I do think this again, this is one of those spots exactly as I was kind of talking about when we kicked it off. I'm like, there's a lot of spots that feel pretty good, and I think they're going to get ownership, but then you add up how many there are, it's like they can't all get ownership. So I don't know how much this is going to get, really, just because Elias Lindholm's been so unbelievably bad. He started the year pretty hot. It fizzled pretty hard. I do think if you're playing Marchand, I just do Lindholm myself. It's been rough sledding, but like that is a pretty highly correlated that, and like you got to think, like, what is Detroit going to do against this Marchand Lindholm line? They're going to be putting out players that just aren't any good. So I'm going all the way. I'm not one-offing Marchand if I play him, just because there is going to be some level of ownership there. And Lindholm will just be, I'm not going to say exactly what it's going to be, but the multiplier on Marchand ownership compared to Lindholm, I think will be not like negligible. I think it would matter.
Yeah, just one, I guess, minor pushback is I would expect the Lindholm line. I would expect the Lindholm line to generally take on the Larkin matchup. Looking at the Montreal game, it seems like they're not totally like Joe Sacco's not making a concerted effort to get out like a matchup line by any stretch. Mostly seems like they're worried about getting Zadorov and Carlo out against the top line, which who the hell cares? Maybe that's even a good thing for Detroit. But yeah, I wouldn't expect like Lindholm to get a hard match with like the Casper Tarasenko Berggren line or something that like could just be a lots of fun. I don't know. That's probably overthinking it. I don't think there's a clear matchup winner or loser here. One thing that I'll note is that the best player on the team over the last 10 games in terms of on ice expected goals for is Justin Brazeau. He's up at like 2.8, which, is about league average, but very good for Boston. That's been pretty dead pace wise. Marchand and Lindholm aren't necessarily up there with him, but Justin Brazeau also only has like 1.5 actual goals per 60 over that stretch. So some clear regression and bound for him. If you really wanted to stack this full line, 13.6K, obviously Lindholm, Marchand are the key players you would want given their strong correlation in all situations. But getting Brazeau for 5-on-5, he's 3,100, producing just fine. Shots wise, rates wise, I would be okay with the full line stack there as well. Anything else you have to say?
No, I get what you're saying there. That's enough for me on this game. Again, very low total game. And I think that'll keep people away. So if you're going to do it, like I said, I think that Boston line's correct, and Pasternak's obviously always in play.
I should also show the sheet, obviously not updated with Monday's games, but looks like Boston will have the highest expected goal index on the night. Now it's only slightly above average. Most of the teams and games look pretty low paced, and it's not really backed by strong underlying Corsi metrics at all. But Boston expected goals, like it's at least something that I like to look at. So there could that could be a reason it floats to the top of my interest levels come Tuesday night. So all right, the Islanders at Montreal. What do we have on this game?
It is a 6 over under plus money on that over. Islanders minus 148. guess that's not that surprising. I mean, again, I kind of stay away from the Islanders. I kind of stay away from playing the Islanders. That has not burned me much. The prices have gone down again. The problem with the Islanders has been the pricing has just sort of been creeping up, and now it's creeping back down again. I would, if I'm going to do it, I'm playing the Brock Nelson line, all of it. Maybe with Noah Dobson, maybe not. He seems, not warranting his 6,100 price, but again, this is a player that at like was almost up to 7K for a while, like coming down, and like this is one you want to buy on it. So you could, but that's about the only interest I have in this game. So what are you thinking?
Dobson was flat out benched for the end of the Sabres game. Now, of course, they were leading and whatever. But like, there's not a ton of positivity out of the Patrick Waugh camp as far as him basically telling Pierre Engvall he doesn't belong in the NHL, despite him being like better than Kyle McLean and Oliver Wahlstrom and Hudson Fashing and Matt Martin. Like, just weird stuff out of Long Island. Dobson, chief among that, of course. So yeah, a little bit risky there. Second line makes a ton of sense. I think the most noteworthy things in this game are JG Pageau, a game time decision. If he plays, obviously that Simone Holmstrom top line gig. Holmstrom scored twice. I think he scored a goal and had the empty netter against Buffalo. And then also in this game, we're expecting Patrick Laine to return from Montreal. And, thoughts on where he plays aside, like that's very clearly a player who will add a spark of offense to this game without adding much from the defensive side of things. So at least two things that could be interesting as far as like how to sort of think through the slate and ultimately what transpires and gets put into people's lineups. So just capping off the Islanders talk, you don't need us to repeat once again that Siplikov, Nelson, Palmieri has one of the best on-ice profiles of any line in the NHL. They, for right now, are perfectly correlated on the power play one with Bo Horvat and Noah Dobson. And yeah, Pageau doesn't play in particular. These bottom six lines or these bottom two lines, I should say, will not get much ice time whatsoever. I mean, Oliver Wahlstrom's on a line and Matt Martin's on the other line. Both of those guys will probably play 6 minutes. So it'll just be, how much Brock Nelson, Siplikov, Palmieri can they get out there? So that makes it interesting. It, of course, comes in at 13.4K because how do we get decent pricing? I don't know. I don't know who to ask. We just need these guys priced up more to avoid them being 20% owned every night. But against Montreal, it's a good play. Anything else before we head to Montreal?
No. Okay. Again, it's number 2 or 3 on the. This is interesting, and people might play it, and people will play this one though. I'm not really that worried about it. But yeah, getting over to Montreal. Not sure as much ownership will come here, but some pieces that are very cheap that are getting good power play run, including Lane Hudson, who continued on that first power play. So is there anywhere you're keying in on?
I don't think I updated that, but
he did. When I was watching, I was watching that game, and he was definitely out there for one of them. I don't know if they switched.
He was.
Matheson scored. Let me just pull it up actually.
Yeah, no, he was not on the top power play. So no, Matt, get out of here, Lane Hudson. You're a bum.
23 minutes power play run, but yeah, I guess he wasn't out there when they got scored on.
All of this to say, we have absolutely no idea what the lineup, what the power plays will look like with Patrick Laine. Reminder: Patrick Laine got hurt in preseason, so like we don't even have regular season games to work with. There was a stretch where Laine looked like he was going to coexist with Caulfield, Suzuki, like on that top unit. I, of course, had my many hesitations about that, given Laine and Caulfield do effectively the same thing, and that Cole Caulfield's probably the best version of that in the NHL, which is, one-shot scorer, right-handed shot, maybe not quite as good as Pastrnak or whatever, but just as far as his like ability to float and create space and find space for himself, I don't think that plays as well in the bumper, and we've never seen Patrick Laine play the bumper position either. So I'm interested in what happens here. I'm guessing, given the matchup and given just the general tenor of the team, that they're just going to ease in Patrick Laine. The season's pretty much already over for them. So, like, I don't see Laine going to line one, power play one right away, say in the Alex Newhook slot alongside Caulfield and Suzuki. But it could happen, and you should at least be on the lookout for it. So yeah, all that to say, not sure what to expect here, but expect big changes based on even the most recent game. Of course, they lost 6-3 to Boston. They did have a great third period. They looked quite competent, and I don't think the lines change up that dramatically. So maybe there's less appetite to change. For right now, I just plugged in line A where Josh Waugh was alongside Doc and Josh Anderson. Waugh was sent down to the AHL to make room for Patrick Laine. So, any final thoughts here before we head to Florida, Pittsburgh?
No, I mean, yeah, that was a lot of talk for a game that I'm really not that interested in, and I'm definitely not interested in playing 7K Caulfield right now. So yeah, we can move over. Next game is Florida at Pittsburgh. Again, it's just like, oh, so Florida at Pittsburgh. I bet you're going to say people are probably going to take a look at Florida. They are definitely going to. Makes a lot of sense. 6.5 total. Florida minus 180, pretty high implied total. The pricing on Florida feels, let's start. First off, you go to defense, you're going to say, well, they're all free. Good luck picking which one's going to win. But the forwards really aren't that expensive, all things considered. I'm not saying Florida and the Islanders are going to be massively piled on, but that would make sense together. And we're only 4 games into this 10-game slate. And I feel like this is just another spot that will see some level of ownership. How to play it? Yeah, I mean, that's the age-old question when it comes to Florida. There's 2 lines that make a ton of sense. There's Aaron Ekblad on the rise. Matt, I'll throw it to you in the studio. Where'd your head at?
Yep. More important news here. Sergei Bobrovsky is going to miss this road trip. His family's expecting another child. So an odd sort of cap quirk is that in order to make room on the salary cap to call up Chris Driedger, they had to send down Mackie Samoskevich, who was playing on the 4th line, but had earned his way onto the top power play unit, and I believe scored there in the most recent game. And basically the team was like, yeah, like if Samoskevich, if we weren't in this cap hell, they have really good players. So obviously, you got to pay them. But if we weren't in this cap situation, like Samoskevich would be playing, he would be on that top power play. We're expecting Carter Verhaeghe to take that top power play job, which of course makes sense given, Barkov, Reinhart, Kachuk, Verhaeghe was their power play one to start. But that's the only reason that we're seeing Verhaeghe on the top unit is because Samoskevich is not with the team in the AHL. Now, Aaron Ekblad running point there has been very, very solid. He's doing Aaron Ekblad things where he's blocking a bunch of shots and taking a bunch of donkey shots of his own. So let's see, over the last 3 games, I think since that switch happened, that they're 3-0. They beat Toronto 5-1, and they put the boots to Carolina, outscoring them a collective 12-3 in those 2 games. Aaron Ekblad has a goal, 3 assists, 9 shots, and 7 blocks. Again, in 3 games, that's pretty crazy. And so his expected fantasy points numbers are on the rise as a result, but also his real fantasy points are on the rise as a result. I'm sure if I narrowed this down to just 3 games, his numbers would be even more extreme in the positive direction. So all that to say, with a matchup with Pittsburgh on the horizon, Aaron Ekblad is one of the top D plays of the slate. Whether that means you stack it with Barkov, Reinhart, sure, go right on ahead. You can throw in Evan Rodriguez if you want to play the second line, be my guest. Matthew Tkachuk especially looks like he's owed some regression. 13 expected fantasy points with only 9 actual fantasy points over his last 10 games. I'm just not that interested in it, other than Aaron Ekblad, who, again, I think is one of the top contenders here. So, and anything you want to add on top of that? I mean, I can show the matchup with Pittsburgh. It looks fine, but it's not like slam dunk obvious, I think, as the field will look at it as.
I agree. I do. I mean, it's one of those things where I feel like if you fade it, you might be, at the end of the night, you might be saying, oh my God, I got so screwed because Sam Reinhart had, 2 goals on 2 shots. And, it feels like it has all the makings of that. And maybe that happens, but I think at the end of the day, I'm just not going to be able to look myself in the mirror and say that I played, 15% Barkov, Reinhart, 18% Barkov, Reinhart, 15% the Chuck Verhaeghe. The fact that it's a split there makes it a little bit interesting. Ekblad will get he'll get ownership. He deserves some ownership here. It's like, if you are like a 1 week season person, it's like, is this restrictive chalk? Is this, what's the other word? Restrictive and expansive chalk. There you go. And like, it feels like Ekblad could be a bit more of expansive chalk.
That piece. Go ahead.
No, go.
I'm just saying, I've read that piece for years and I still have no idea what the hell that's supposed to mean. So I just kind of ignore it. But anyway, go ahead. Maybe you'll teach me something here on the show.
Well, the way
DFS.
I read it too. The way I look at it is like, the way I look at it, and obviously like it's different because like, hockey and football are different. And like, you're like, the way I'm looking at it is, could Ekblad get there without needing to be added to chalkier? This is the way I was going with it, at least. Like, could he be a one-off that actually makes it an expansive piece? Like, I think yes, because of obviously the price. It means that like, even if he is chalky, he could get there. But like, the amount of teams that will be Ekblad plus at least 2 Panthers versus how many teams will be Ekblad with nobody, are you actually potentially getting into a different vacuum, even if his ownership is 25%? Like, I still think that there's something to that. So I think he could be expansive chalk without the other guys. Whereas I think that Barkov, Reinhardt are obviously very restrictive, not only because of their price tag, but because you're trying to build this perfect vacuum with Ekblad as well. When things are kind of, heating up, and they've always been there for Verhaeghe when he's getting the run. The truck is figuring it out. I'm not saying he's, a smash. It's not amazing. His price has gone right back up again, but like, I'm optimistic, I guess, that this core 4 doesn't need to break the slate for Ekblad still to get there. And what percentage of teams will just be Ekblad one-offs? Again, enough. But I don't think because of his price, it doesn't kill you to put him in there. Like, you could do that. Probably a bad explanation for what 1 week season's going for, but it's a different sport. I'm trying to like explain it differently, I guess. I stumbled over that for long enough. Does that make any sense?
It was fine. I can't say you did a poor job of explaining it. So yeah, kudos to you for actually paying attention to when people talk about things from a theory and a strategy perspective. It's a sign of growth. But unfortunately, we are running up against the hard out that we both have. So not even halfway through the slate at 32 minutes. Let's keep things going into Pittsburgh. They practiced. No changes to any of the lines. D pairs are a little bit different, but I think that's just because Owen Pickering was sick, and therefore he's back now. So really where it boils down to is the top line. Rust, Crosby, Rakell, 19.7K in a pretty difficult matchup. Second line, Drew O'Connor, Evgeny Malkin, Tomasino is only 12K. Malkin's been fine, and Tomasino has been excellent. Obviously, my stuff has a little bit of problem with players who have multiple teams in their filter. Basically, he has both Nashville and Pittsburgh games, so I'm not pulling it out properly. But I'll throw it to you while I quickly look up the stretch where Tomasino's been playing for Pittsburgh here.
I mean, we can talk about this game till we're blue in the face. I don't think there's any chance I'm actually going to be clicking on the Penguins, mainly because Crosby is the entire catalyst of this team's success.
How about Erik Karlsson?
It's a situation. I could buy it. I mean, there is. I think that comparatively to Detroit, even though it's pretty expensive, I actually think it makes a bit more sense. As like getting super unique and playing Pittsburgh is going to just be, unowned. It shouldn't be highly owned. It's a bad matchup. It's a very good team, all that stuff. But there is at least a case to be made that Pittsburgh got more exciting, and that there's at least when Tomasino got traded to Pittsburgh, everyone kind of said, who cares? And it's like, I actually think that matters, and maybe could open up a little bit more room on the ice for everybody. Is that going to make a big difference on this slate, on this game? I don't know. I am not going to go there. I can't imagine that being the case. I wouldn't fault anyone for actually Galaxy branding themselves into playing a Pittsburgh stack at 1%.
The primary reason I'm interested in this is that Erik Karlsson has kept up his elevated shot rate, and his price tag is just plummeted. Now, obviously, he's not done much. He's looked pretty disinterested most of the time, but in terms of like a GBP play with high upside, Erik Karlsson certainly fits that bill for just 5,100. Also, he spends most of his 5-on-5 time, especially at home, out with the Evgeny Malkin line. Chris Letang and Sidney Crosby, of course, have that mind meld, and so even though Letang's getting long in the tooth, taking he's taking that ice time with Sid, which of course is really good for him. I mean, Chris Letang just is coming off, I think, a 40 bomb the other night.
Yep.
Chris Letang can still do it in spurts, but Erik Karlsson has been doing it on a night in, night out basis as far as just getting shots toward the net. Evgeny Malkin 6,500 is a little bit expensive, but like he's clearly the play driver on his line. And Tomasino in 3 games in Pittsburgh is putting up an expected fantasy points mark of 11.8 and an actual of 12.1. Like, you are talking about a guy who has smashed his first 3 games, and especially for a 2,800 price tag. It's a really difficult matchup again. Like, I'm not going into it like as a key part of my strategy for this slate, but if it works out, I think Tomasino's in a great position. I think Erik Karlsson's is a fine one-off as well. I have some pretty big interest in a Tomasino built pairing. I think he's just a player with the sort of profile that we would expect to succeed in the NHL. We know, based on the Eeli Tolvanen experience and several others, Kevin Fiala, that Nashville's just not very good at internally figuring out whether their players are good or not. I think Tomasino is in a position to just sort of be like a 4 to 5K player by the end of the year that we're getting for 2,800 with no ownership in a matchup that up until a week ago was like, oh yeah, what's wrong with the Florida Panthers, who now don't have their starting goaltender in Bobrovsky for this game. So a lot of reasons I think to like it. Anything else you want to add to that?
I think you summed it up really well. Like, it's just one of those things where Nashville drafts these high-end goal-scoring prospects, even Kamel coming up the pipeline, and then they box them out. They don't play him in the right role. They try to force him to be a player they're not, and then they trade them or just let him go for nothing, and they flourish elsewhere. And like, this is where Tomasino can shine. So I definitely like him as a one-off. That makes a ton of sense. I don't think it's going to garner too much ownership either. And if it does, well, what are you going to do? We can move on, keep things moving. I can't imagine a lot of people are sitting there feverishly writing down notes on Pittsburgh against Florida. We can move over to, again, another correct. Stop me if you heard this before. Another great spot as Washington at home against the San Jose Sharks. I did put Celebrini on the cover here, other side. He's been fantastic. We'll start there with Zetterlund and Eklund. That line works. Shocking. If you put your best 3 offensive players together, they produce offense. I'm not going to completely go over the defensive numbers because I don't have them in front of me. But yeah, I think that you could actually take a good look at Eklund, Celebrini. I've been not banging the drum of like you can target Washington, but they do seem like a team that, like, if the goaltending doesn't show up, they certainly can give up some goals. I don't think anyone went into the season with this notion of like their defense is going to be fixed. And it's just been pretty good. It's been good enough, but I don't think they're allergic to giving up 5 goals. They have a lot of players down the lineup that I don't really trust defensively. Really even up in the lineup. So yeah, I think this game has fireworks. Vegas would agree. It's a 6.5 minus money on that over. Washington is monster favorites, almost minus 300 at minus 298. So I don't think San Jose is going to see a ton. I do like this pairing more than most. It's not, again, I know Matt's showing you right now, it's not amazing, but like at this price, betting on this talent, I do think you can do for San Jose. And then we'll get over to Washington, which is obviously a great spot. We're not going to be a shocker to anyone.
Yeah, it's there's 3 different stories based on what metrics you like to look at over the last 10 games. Expected goals doesn't look good. A 4.1 expected goal pace, if you will. By Corsi's, it looks fine, about average, 115. You can see it's basically in the average of most of the games on this slate. And then if you look at what's actually happened, again, all this is at 5-on-5, so power play not considered. The actual goal index is a 7.6. Just obnoxious. Both teams have been scoring off the I don't even know what the term is. They're going crazy, scoring goals and also allowing goals. And of course, a lot of that is more recency driven, especially for San Jose, putting the absolute walloping on Seattle.
Yeah.
But I think it boils down to your first star of the week, Macklin Celebrini. When he heard this, he told the reporters, I think, "Holy fuck" is what he said. So shout out to a real one there in Macklin. He looks every bit the part. My only minor concern is that with Michael Granlund back, the minutes and just the sort of combinations could be screwy. Like if they struggle in the first period, does Granlund go back with Eklund and Zetterlund? Certainly could see that happening. Also, don't know how the power plays change. I'm projecting Granlund to rejoin that top unit in place of Alex Wenberg. But some things to check in on for sure. Other than that, though, I don't really see a ton like against the idea of stacking around Celebrini. Like all the expecteds are there. It's just a matter of matchup of Washington. So getting over to the Washington side, no practice today to confirm this, but over the weekend they put together McMichael, Strome, and Tom Wilson. You will note that that is a perfectly correlated power play one stack. It only costs you about 17.8, less than 18K for honestly. Connor McMichael might be the best 5-on-5 player in the league so far this year. And against San Jose, like, yes, please. Dylan Strome, of course, a bit of a playmaker. And then Tom Wilson's been pretty good all year. Add in the fact that you get reasonable deep combinations with John Carlson for sub 6K and Jake Chikrin for just 5,200, both of whom complete that top power play unit. Could be a very, very enticing spot for the field and also just for us in general as, long-standing Connor McMichael fans. So, just jam in Washington, move on.
Yeah. I mean, it won't get overlooked, but again, we're 5 games in. I've talked about 5 stacks that should see ownership. This is one of them again, and we're halfway through the slate. There's not a lot else here to really uncover. I just don't think you're going down the lineup in Washington when there's absolutely no reason to do it. If you were going to, I mean, do you have any interest in PLD without Mike Michael, or is that ship gonna have to sail?
Yeah, I mean, it's easy to say no. However, Washington 2 with Protas, Dubois, and Taylor Radish is 9,100. Like, I mean, we're just not paying anything for what have been pretty good players. I mean, Radish is whatever, but like Protas has been pretty good. I mean, he was smashing when Ovi was healthy. So like it's at least not crazy to think that they could outproduce a 9,100 price tag as a unit. But generally speaking, I'm not interested. But I certainly wouldn't say that you were crazy if you looked at the second line closely, given the matchup and all.
Let's get over to, we'll go over to a team that we might say you're crazy if you stack. Over to Seattle.
Absolutely. Seattle has sort of figured out who their good players are. Yes.
Go.
Did I don't know if I updated the power plays here. I think I did. I don't know. Anyway, Vince Dunn returned, which is good news. We like Vince Dunn, and all that comes with him. The bad news is everything else. It's a disaster. Chandler Stevenson, I don't believe we know his status, but if he doesn't play, there's a vacuum of minutes to go around. I'm expecting their lines to change once again, but it's just the same old story. Shane Wright played like 15 minutes, which I think is a season high. Without Stevenson, that's going to happen. But is 15 minutes against Carolina enough good news to play it? No. Brandon Montour and Vince Dunn are both super priced up as defensive options. I just prefer the Washington guys, power play one. So really only if you're an insane person will you be playing Seattle, but check in on their lines Tuesday morning if you do. Talk to me about Carolina for a minute and note the line changes on the screen.
Yeah. I mean, it's just another case of when Carolina, I don't really know. I mean, they may have either lost a game in there or whatever, but they got change everything.
They got stomped by Florida twice in a row, 12-3 collective, across the 2 games.
guess I didn't pay close enough attention to the stomping that they took. But Eric Robinson is just back on line one. Well, I guess he wasn't on line one, but he's up the line one with Aho and Nachos, the Robinson Nachos pairing that we all know and love, and we, it's a thing. I still don't know if I'm going there. Like, the prices have only gotten higher on the Carolina Hurricanes over time, other than Seth Jarvis. I kind of think of him as a potential one-off piece that I might at least take a look at. But other than that, I just don't know if I'm going there. Like Aho, Nachos, Robinson, Svechnikov, Drury, Roslovic. Roslovic without Sebastian Aho doesn't really interest me much. Svechnikov at 7,200 away from Aho kind of just feels like he's not getting there. He's just never actually going to reach his expected fantasy points for some stupid reason, but it is what it is. On the other hand, Seth Jarvis just continues to always get to his expectation and then some. So, like, I don't know why I'm paying up for guys when I could just pay down for Jarvis if I'm going to do it. But at the end of the day, I don't think I'm going to do it. It's a 6 to over under. Carolina is a monster favorite. I do think they could garner a little bit of ownership, not a ton. I don't think it's going to be a very popular game. Pace isn't probably the best it could be, but Seattle's been incredibly porous, as we just pointed out. So people might take a look here at Aho Nachos. I don't think they're looking at Jarvis. I'm probably just not playing this game.
Yeah, Aho Nachos, certainly interesting. I mean, we know Eric Robinson's deal, and it's very unlikely that he breaks a slate, yet somehow Nachos has been super productive with him on his wing. So, like, Godspeed, Brindamore. Seth Jarvis always seems to get shifts with Aho, be it, power play, PK, but also 5-on-5, So maybe they load up a hero line with Jarvis, Aho, Nachos. That's sort of like the hero line of Jarvis, Aho, Svechnikov that they've gone to on occasion. I can't say I have much interest in spending 14.4K on Carolina too. Seattle's just not a team that I love to play against in general, and so I'd rather just play the quote unquote good players in Aho Nachos. But I understand it. Not a game for me though that I'm super interested in.
Yeah, and I know we just said they got, again, back to back. I'm pretty sure they got smacked by San Jose, but they only gave up 1.7 expected goals. Sometimes your goalies just don't play well at all. Ferraro and CC score against your goalie. It's not a good night for them, and I don't think that we should be like super indicative of like, oh, Seattle's broken. No, they just got back. They're probably their best defenseman, and I think they're fine. So I'm just not going there. It seems like a fool's errand. And another game that feels, pretty decent, I guess, on paper, but I don't know. It's again right up there with the lowest totals. Not again because I haven't talked about it yet, but for the first time, I'm telling you, it's up there with the lowest totals: 5.5 -112. Minnesota a -148 favorite at home. I guess what I was getting to is like there's explosive firepower in this game. Some of it getting there this year, some of it showing up at times and sleeping on others. I just don't think it's going to garner any ownership. Garner's been my word of the day, so maybe I should talk about Connor Garland. But how do you stack this to success? On the Vancouver side, I think I'm going with you can't. So I'm going to start there. There is a clear stack that you could do, but like I just don't see it ever winning. Like Quinn Hughes has been so good that they finally priced him to the correct price. He smashed a couple slates. I think that the ship has finally sailed on the Quinn Hughes gravy train. That the 6,300 Quinn Hughes goes up to 8K, and now he's not worth playing.
Yeah, the entire thing is just way too expensive. I mean, Vancouver won, Pedersen, DeBrusk, Besser, 17.2K. No, thank you. Not in this matchup.
Yep.
This matchup looks like the worst on paper of the slate. I mean, Minnesota is just a buzzsaw defensively. Of course, Minnesota has guys and they have a power play that this game could explode. And we saw even last year that very similar situation. Of course, JT Miller was involved. These teams combined for, I think it was 19 goals or maybe 18 goals. So like crazier things have happened than a Vancouver Minnesota game just going absolutely ballistic. But I don't see anything here that I can reasonably recommend. I think the Minnesota side is the only place where it's like, if you don't care about money, just spend 23.7 on the top line.
Yep.
I assume it sticks, but just, double check that and you can move on. But Kaprizov, Eriksson, Boldy have been great. They're the three best players on the team. Even when you look at by expected fantasy points, that's also true. So Yeah, you can stack it, but I personally have absolutely no interest in this game. I saw a question about Juracek. Are the Wild going to play Juracek on PP1? I would be absolutely floored if they did that. Not to say that Juracek couldn't get there one day, but I don't think that's his game necessarily. I don't think he's coming in as a, we talk about Zellweger a lot, like, a guy like that who's like very clearly like the offensively, a slanted type of player. I don't really think that's him. So like, I don't think they're getting him to say like, yeah, we're rebuilding our power play on the fly around this guy. I think he comes in, maybe replaces Declan Chisholm, plays second power play minutes. I could see Faber Spurgeon, one of those two getting power play one. I actually have not looked at their most recent game, but we have no confirmation on what Juracek's role will be. He might not even get a power play role to start, but I'm not like expecting huge things from him fantasy wise right away.
Yeah, I would agree with that assessment. I guess with that notion, say the line Bart is GA in the chat. Are we looking at Brock Faber in this situation where it's like if you're already paying all that money for Minnesota 1 and you're saying that they nuke a 10-game slate, can Brock Faber get there at 4K? I would say that honestly for the first time all season, I think you add him. You go 4-man. I don't think you even need to do it, but like you could play Faber, you could play Ekblad, and find another cheaper stack to go along with Minnesota, and they have to go for, you're looking at a Kaprizov 4-point night type of situation. Brock Faber comes along for 2 assists. He gets you to 10. He gets a couple blocks in there, maybe hits a bonus. He's done it in the past. It's not like he does it every night, but I could see a scenario where you get 18 out of Brock Faber and you're sitting there like, okay, I'm fine. Not a alpha jam by any stretch of the imagination, but I'll at least give a couple, when Brock Faber gets down to 4K and he's underproducing as expected, which kind of does make sense for him as a player. Again, we're assuming that Minnesota 1 wins the slate. What does that look like? I think he could come along for the ride in 26 minutes.
Sure, he could. I don't have a problem with it. It's fine. It's not Aaron Ekblad. I don't think it's good, but it's fine.
Right.
All right.
Right. I agree.
Let's keep it moving though. 2 St. Louis, Winnipeg.
Yep, we're getting to the last 5.5 total on the slate, right in the middle of the 2 at -115 on that over. Monster favorite Winnipeg, 0.01% ownership on your getting cheaper St. Louis Blues. The Jim Montgomery St. Louis Blues, I may add to the equation here. Is there any thoughts on, again, what I have to infer is the lowest total, if not right up there with the lowest total, St. Louis Blues here on this slate? Any thoughts on them?
Well-rested team. They're one of the few teams that didn't play a gazillion games around Thanksgiving, I think, dating back to 11/24. They've played 3 times since then, which I think that's like 7-8 days. So most teams are playing 4 and 6 or whatever, but they last played Saturday. They did not play Friday either, so like a nice little anyway, they're a well-rested team. Dylan Holloway, this third line has been incredible for them. Holloway is on his 3-game streak of double-digit fantasy points, including a 28 against New Jersey on Wednesday. So if it's cheap, you can certainly play it. I have no interest in spending up on this game though. And even though the top line is like 11K, like I don't care about Robert Thomas or Jake Neighbors in this spot. Jordan Kyrou 6,400. No, thank you. Really only punts for me.
Yeah, I think this is a note to self. Keep an eye on the Blues moving forward. They have been somewhat exciting since getting Jim Montgomery. That was the big complaint before he got there. I'm not saying that this guy's going to open him up entirely, but keep an eye on him going forward. Maybe not on this slate against the Winnipeg Jets. And I'm not going to say the same can be said about Winnipeg. I do have some interest. Again, really low total, pretty big favorite. Offense decently concentrated. Do you have something to add on St. Louis or you want to move on? Yeah, offense decently concentrated. Ehlers missed last game. I think we're expecting him back. Did that get confirmed today? I can't remember.
I don't believe so. He was a question mark going into last game against Dallas and wound up ultimately not playing. So
Yeah, I
I
don't think
think
we
he'll
got
be in, but we
confirmation
don't
of.
know for sure.
So it does change a little bit. Like, so let's just take a look at the Dallas game. They lost 3-1. Shifley had 23 minutes. Connor had 21 minutes. Velarde had 19 minutes. Power play, one role that was vacated went to Cole Perfetti, who saw 15 minutes. But again, like really no one saw a ton of run other than the Lowry line. And that was just, of course, they always see their run. They always see their time and their defensive role. If there's no Ehlers and this concentration of offense gets a little more concentrated, I'm going to give it a really, really good look. If there is Ehlers, I almost think you could argue the power play gets better. And does it make that big of a difference that, he's in there eating up some minutes?
Yeah.
Probably not. They're probably going to take away a bit of Nino and some others. So I don't know if it really matters. For some reason in my brain, I feel like it does, but it doesn't. I don't know. I might take a look at Winnipeg one. They're at least interesting because, again, we've talked about so many spots. This is not going to see much at all in the ownership
Yeah, and
category.
I think that's right. I mean, there's just no.
It's
I
probably
mean,
right.
they screwed up the top line too last game. They went Shifley, Connor, and Domestikov in the third period. Velarde down with Perfetti and Alex Iafallo. So there's absolutely nothing here for me.
Yeah, that's fine.
All right, two more games: Columbus, Calgary. For the second time in 5 days or whatever, just a little scheduling quirk. So obviously the Friday game was very emotional with Columbus and Calgary and the Gaudreau's in town. We saw already that Guy Gaudreau is he's practicing, running practice with Calgary and whatnot. So I'm sure it'll be another emotional event to be a part of. From a fantasy perspective, though, because of course, these other things matter a lot more, but that's not our purpose of podcasting. Columbus One continues to run rampage over the NHL. Now it's been priced up 17.1K, but I'm positive the Stochastic Bros will still be jamming it. They were 50% on the Friday slate. I've truly never seen anything like it. Maybe was it Saturday they were 50%? Yeah, they were 50% against Montreal. I'm sorry.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. Okay.
But on a 10-game slate, this line was 50% owned. Just absolutely obnoxious. You can't do it if it's going to be anywhere above 10%. You just can't do it. This line's not that good that there's 17.1K. It's Columbus still. Come on. Let's be real.
It feels like I say two or three things. It feels, number one, like a situation where you have this very unlikely to smash the slate line being priced up like a line that could smash the slate. And the thing is that they just did it, right? They just did it on Sunday, and people are going to look at that and say, okay, who cares? They can do it. And it's like, okay, this line is a very middle of the road. It's been priced up too high. I get it from, a couple perspectives, but that perspective is not, it's a leverage play at best, and there's no leverage here. They're going to be owned. So, no, thank you. I agree. Kent Johnston rocks. If you're going to do it in any capacity, I think you just go through the second line, and that's it. And I don't even think that's that good of a play. So no, thank you. The other guy right here, Borensky, I think he was the second star of the week. That's why I put him on there. He was up there, I believe. Absolutely
He
insanely.
should be.
I mean, he's just been otherworldly, and it's one of those things where it's like, I feel like we said it every year, including this year. We're like, we still like Zach Werenski. That the Gaudreau thing was awful, and it's been really great to see him succeed and others succeed. And I'm just not paying 8,300 for him, but I love this. I love watching him play. I love everything he does on the ice. Are there any other pieces on this Columbus team that you can even consider other than anything else here?
Yeah, I mean, I should correct the record. It was Wednesday that they were egregiously
It was
owned.
Wednesday. I was going
And
to
I
say, I
think that
think I
was
remember.
a 14 game slate or something obnoxious too. So just even worse. Anyway, yeah, I don't think that I don't think Columbus 2 stands out to me as an obvious leverage spot. I know I'm the guy who likes to fade Calgary and yada yada, but I just don't see it here. It's first line or nothing, and if that first line is getting projects around the industry, I just don't have any interest in it. And I also should correct the record. A lot of people here in the chat enjoyed the Dig It Stochastic. I love those guys. I watched their show,
we love,
and I think that what they do is necessary in order to keep the space alive. Just to give people content to listen to. That's why we do what we do, because we liked listening to content and realized that when that content went away, that we just wanted to be the ones to fill it, since we were going to think about things from this perspective. Anyway, shout out to them. Yes, maybe though they should tone it down a little bit on their love for these Columbus Donkeys, because they should never be 50% owned on any slate ever for any reason.
Correct. Okay, yeah, I want to, take a minute here, and I know we both have to get going here, but I gotta say, I really think that this is a very interesting pivot, is to go the other way on this and go to the Flames. This game, I didn't say it yet, but it's 6.5 minus money on that over. The Flames are minus 142 favorites. So maybe this is going to show up in optimizers. Maybe I'm looking at this and not seeing that this is going to be owned and people are actually going to see it and play it and find it. I think the problem is what do you play, right? What is the successful stack that leads you to the promised land? I want to find it. I want to say I'm going to play it. I think I'm just going through Sharangovich because that's my guy. But Matt, I'll pause here.
Yeah,
you take control for a second.
I don't recall the exact injuries, but Walker Duehr and Jake Pelletier were brought up from the AHL. I'm not going to sit here and try and figure out who's in, who's out, whatever. But all that to say, Walker Duehr on the third line with Zari and Coleman makes me think that line's not going to get a ton of minutes. And so obviously the fourth line with Lomberg, Rooney, we've seen them not get many minutes. Coronado, Backlund, Sharangovich did remain intact. That line's going to cost you 11.8K. If we were to get a chalk line from this game, I would think that line's the line in question. But a new line also of Huberdeau, Kadri, Pospisil, which, by the way, means that Andrei Kuzmenko is a healthy scratch. Very funny. That guy just absolutely sucks. Okay. But 11.3K for Huberdeau, Kadri, Pospisil. I think that's where my head goes. Nazem Kadri, 4,900, will be extremely popular. I'm not sure that Huberdeau and Pospisil will, though. So maybe you could do something like Kadri, Coronado, Sharangovich, Uyghur, if you really wanted to get different. But yeah, certainly news there to consider. And any final thoughts on Calgary?
I mean, one of these stacks that we're mentioning, including this Calgary stuff, is just not going to get the ownership we expect. No matter how you, I think we'll be able to suss it out a little bit tomorrow. But again, as you're making this consideration, and those top two lines are definitely in the pool for me. I'm not sure where I'm going to go yet, or do I even go off the reservation and go Kadri, Coronado, Sharangovich? I think at that point you might just have to throw in Uyghur, which is a little bit sickening. His price just doesn't reflect the output, but the blocks bonus, he gets 2 points, et cetera, et cetera. You get the picture I'm trying to build. I don't know, but we can move on. We don't need to, the plays Mackenzie Uyghur, not to play Mackenzie Uyghur. That is not really the question, because we won't. Final game of the night, probably everyone's favorite game. If you just, look at this, what's your favorite matchup? Our highest total, 6.5 over under, minus 118 on that over. Edmonton, a road favorite at minus 130. Here we are. What are we doing? We've talked about a million good spots. Yeah. Is this another one?
Yeah, it's a really good spot. There's not a ton of expected goal pace on the slate, so you look at it, it's actually the best from that perspective. This matchup is the actual goals are there as well, behind only the aforementioned San Jose Washington fiesta that'll transpire, and then Seattle Carolina, which is largely driven by their goaltenders not being able to stop a beach ball. So a lot of interesting I think notes here. Unfortunately, we don't have any of them right now. So I think Edmonton is safe. Zach Hyman was practicing, but not in line rushes. So it looks like it's going to remain the way it was, which was RNH, McDavid, Kapanen, Podkolzin, Draisaitl, Connor Brown, with Corey Perry on the top power play playing in a fourth line role. So just quickly summarizing the Edmonton stuff is, I think RNH, it might be time to buy back on him. 10 expected fantasy points per game over his last 10. just $4,500. No Hyman for McDavid to feed, so maybe RNH is sort of going to be the relatively lower owned guy than the McDavid Draisaitl combination, which of course you can play. I think the Vasily Podkolzin ship has sailed for me. He's still super cheap at 2,800, and he's been productive in spurts, but maybe not the matchup for me. So what are you doing with this Edmonton side? Could you see a Jeff Skinner making his way into your lineups for 3,200?
I don't see that happening. Not at all. No.
Okay.
It's just there's a lot of cheap plays that can work, and I don't think Edmonton is what people are trying to find to get them to work. So like if you end up going with McDavid, Kapanen, Bouchard, I like the idea quite a bit. I don't see a scenario where I'm getting Draisaitl with McDavid, although I see why you would do that. Draisaitl shooting again. They will find the ice together quite frequently, and it feels like when one of them breaks the slate, the other comes along for the ride. I think I prefer Bouchard, though. 7K for him doesn't feel that bad, all things considered, while all the other defensemen have gone, to the moon and back. He really hasn't. I think his upside is just as good as any of them. So I'm most interested in Bouchard, McDavid, and probably Kapanen. I don't really see a problem with it. Power play 2, he's with Connor McDavid for 13, 14 minutes. You can do it. You don't have to, though. You could even just play those 2 and move on and stack, like I said, a bunch of cheap stuff around it. Any thoughts, or ready to move on to the final game?
Vegas.
Get it out of here.
We do not know what Vegas is going to do. They got absolutely demolished by Utah 6-0 on Saturday night. So I'm expecting all of these lines to change. Of note, Victor Olofsson did return to the lineup. Dorofeev kept the power play 1 job. Does that stick into Tuesday? Who the hell knows? So certainly need to keep an eye on what Vegas does. We just simply do not know how they will react. Regardless of what happens, I do think they're a little bit pricey, even though it's a good matchup and like a fun matchup. So Eichel's 9,300. He's been better, but I don't think good enough to warrant that price hike. Maybe keep an eye on if Olofsson gets onto that top power play role. Otherwise, I'm generally out on Vegas in the spot, and I would rather just get my exposure to this game through the Edmonton side.
I agree, pretty much fully.
All right.
Yeah, you're just not
top stacks, guarantee goals. We got to go.
We do have to go. I have to hit the ice myself. Top stacks for me, and there's a ton of them. I'll start with Washington 1. Just think for the price, you're getting a really, really good stack. I just wonder if that's the one that maybe gets away from some people. I'm going all the way, maybe even with Chychrun or Carlson. I could be convinced on either side. But Strome, McMichael, Tom Wilson.
Okay. I'll go with the Marchand line. Marchand, Lindholm, and Justin Brazeau. I mentioned Brazeau has been the best 5-on-5, like on ice expected goals player on the team, not getting much luck to go there. So even if the field finds its way to Brad Marchand for his price, I think it'll be mostly done via power play stacks. I don't have much interest in a 9,200 Pastrnak myself, so why not just take the full 5-on-5 line stack and say that they dominate the game in that respect? So Lindholm, Marchand, and Justin Brazeau for me.
Yeah, I'm going to try my best. I'm going to play around with the idea of playing McDavid, Bouchard, Kapanen with Washington. So that's kind of why I mentioned Kapanen, and I'll just mention it here. I think that's my favorite way of building, and then you're going to need to punt 2 more positions off. So is this going to work? Am I going to find a way to make this fit the way I'd like it to? I don't know, but these are my favorite 2. This is where I want to build. The question is it going to be something I can actually bring to the table at the end of the day? So I'll just go McDavid, Bouchard, and Kasperi Kapanen. Okay.
I will finish it off with I'm going to do it because I always do it, but I'm going to talk about Pittsburgh. So take notes, Stanley Johnson's side chick. The Malkin, Tomasino, Erik Karlsson stack, I think it's just a skeleton key for GPPs. It's negative 2% owned. I love Tomasino, the profile, the player. I love his first 3 games with the team where he's been a fixture, getting shots on net, which we love to see. and Eric Carlson, Evgeny Malkin. I will never be able to quit them. If everyone's sort of off the scent of Florida being a little bit tenuous with all their losses heading into the past week, I will go right back there with them having to roll out the combination of Knight and Dreger with no Bob. They sent down Sam Skevich. I don't know. It's going to be unowned, so why not just take a swing in GBPs on Malkin, Tomasino, and Eric Carlson? Top stacks or guarantee goals, DJ.
Guarantee goals. Just taking a peek at that right now. Do you have something that immediately comes to mind for you? I think I have one, but
yeah. Immediately comes to mind Jason Zucker, 3,400 alongside Tage and Alex Tuck, guaranteed goal number 1.
I don't know where our guarantee goals are, so I'm just going to use this. You have Zucker. Yep. I will go with Sharon Govich, because I always do.
As you always do. Tried and true. All right. For my last one, I will go with Marty Nachas, 7,500. Even though he's playing with Eric Robinson, we've seen that only powers him up. And we know that Eric Robinson ain't stealing the goals. So the Marty party season continues, and he rolls Seattle.
I really actually do like that a lot with Aho. So I have 66. 6,600 is going to give me, when I look at everything and then reconsider it again because something's here. Ooh, Macklin Celebrini, cover boy.
Wow. There you go.
I honestly, that game stack actually feels good. That's one thing I never actually got back to saying. I did actually you could play Celebrini, Eklund, full line 1. I mean, what's the matchup going to look like? I don't even know. I have no idea. I mean, Granlund, they're going to want to put out against the top line.
Stromline, okay. Stromline and the Dowd line will eat the matchup minutes, but we got to go.
Yeah,
so
we got to go. You're right.
Thank you to everyone for hanging out. Thank you to the chat. We'll try and be more receptive to chats when we don't have hard outs. But with all that said, be sure to follow us on Twitter at Fake Moods, at DJ_Mitchell94. The pod is at Morningscape Pod. I tweeted out my Team USA, what I would do for the Four Nations face-off. I believe those rosters were released sometime in the last couple hours. So I'm interested to see those. And engage with me on Twitter if you want to argue about it. Was it Wednesday? I don't know.
It must be stupid. I thought I literally thought it was Wednesday. I was dying at the. Okay. I know you have to go. I'm going to keep talking. Let's go. I'm going to talk about something that doesn't matter. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Next time, hopefully we could do 9:15 game start for me is not that often. I'm normally playing at 10 something. So we just record whenever. Right. But here we are.
Thank you all.
I'm going to go
for listening. From Doug, from DJ, from myself. Have a good Tuesday slate, everybody, and we will see ya.